All right, before we begin, I want to make all attendees aware that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the village's YouTube channel within the next 2 working days. Please be mindful of individual privacy and avoid sharing any personal or sensitive information that may not be appropriate for online distribution. If you please say here when I call your name to indicate your presence. Jim Schuler.
Here.
Laura Peck.
Here.
John Young. Ben Schmidt.
Here.
Deb Howden. Mike Wittenweiler.
Here.
Kevin O'Driscoll. All right, we have a quorum.
All right, I'd like to call the planning commission meeting and public hearing of Tuesday, September 2nd to order. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Citizen comment on any subject other than items listed on the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move on. So I'd like a motion to open the public hearing to receive public comment on amendments to chapter 225.
I'll move.
The second? Second. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The public hearing is open. Is there any comments from any members of the
Hi,
public?
Deb's here.
Hi, Deb.
Thanks.
Hey, Deb. Are there, now, before I can close it, I've got to ask. Yeah. Would anybody like to speak in the public comment meeting or the public meeting? Second time, would anybody like to speak? Third, any more public comment? Hearing none, I consider a motion to close the public hearing for amendments to chapter 225.
I will move to close.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Discuss and develop recommendation to village board regarding amendments to chapter 225. Mark?
Well, you'll recall, we've talked about this twice now. This will be the third time. It started with trying to fix a section of the new zoning ordinance that was written incorrectly. The so-called 150% rule. In the course of you all suggested that you wanted to narrow the application of that 150% rule so that it controlled or regulated the size of houses only where a single individual was accumulating lots to build a new home on. With that, it significantly reduced the ability of the building board to consider size when looking at new house proposals. And so, especially where special exceptions were involved, the ordinance also includes some criteria that will open back up that ability to look at house sizes in it, albeit a little bit more subjective manner. We talked about some nuances at the last meeting and discussed one or two more after that meeting. For instance, do you count accessory buildings when you're looking at comparisons? How do you factor in the reality that different size parcels have different normal floor area ratios when looking at special exceptions? Those are just two examples. We tried to address those specifics or those nuances in the revisions that you have before you today. The other thing that this ordinance does is takes care of some what I'll call glitches related particularly to references. One section of the ordinance points to another section and ends up being the wrong section. Oops, got to fix that. There's a handful of examples of that. And then there's one other item that we felt related to the kind of building size aspect of this request and the public hearing notice, and that related to building height. As we've been using the ordinance and now have had some architects look at the new standards, in one case asked a question or made a suggestion, hey, your graphic on building height could be better. And so we are proposing to fix that. Other than that, I'm happy to answer questions or go into more specifics as the commission would prefer.
Any questions, comments? Nice work, Mark. I know this has been a
Well,
tough road to hoe. I don't know that we're all the way there yet. I'd be really interested in talking about this a year from now, especially regarding the subjective criteria by which the building board reviews applications.
right.
And seeing how that language is applied, or process are applied. Early on, I suggested that I see you or Tanner taking a more active role in basically making a recommendation to the committee on that, just like we do for a conditional use permit.
Yeah,
But let's wait and see how it goes.
we do have.
They do use that.
Yeah, we absolutely do have, new houses being proposed. We have more discussions with the building board on the new ordinance. We gotta catch them up a little bit.
Mhm.
And so, especially once this is adopted, to catch them up on what's, accurate and complete will be a good next step. We've talked to the building board chair a little bit, but we gotta, I think, catch up the whole board.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And is Christine fine with this change? Have we talked to her about it?
I haven't talked to her about it.
We talked to her about it. I shared it with her last week. She said she might have comments. She didn't offer any comments to us.
And I've kept her copy on.
But it was, she was at least apprised that this change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Somebody like to make a motion?
move to approve.
Would you like to?
Yeah, would you like to second?
I'll second it.
All right, Laura, I've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Sorry about that. I couldn't unmute. I was stuck.
All right, do you have any questions or comments, Deb?
Nope, nope.
Laura?
And Mark, thanks so much for all your help.
Yeah, so we've got a motion to approve ordinance number 2025-05 as is in your packet. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda is the new flood zoning ordinance. So I'd like that motion to, do I need a motion to open the public? Yeah, I'd like a motion to open the public hearing to receive public comment on repeal and recreation of chapter 226 of our code.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Second. Would anybody like to, from the public, like to share a comment? Or ask a question? Would anybody from the public like to?
Pressure.
Yeah.
I'm used to it.
Make a comment or share a question? And third time, would anybody from the public like to make a comment or ask a question? Hearing none, I'd consider a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Ben's gonna get.
Aye.
I
All right, Mark.
This is a proposal based on the request or requirement, depending on how you want to look at it, from the Department of Natural Resources to update our floodplain zoning regulations. The primary motivator is that DNR has updated or at least reclassified floodplain in certain areas of the county, including along the lake in Maple Bluff. The area that's currently designated has been as flood fringe would now be doubly designated as flood storage areas. The significance of that is that flood fringe allows a teensy bit of improvement to increase the flood elevation. Flood storage does not allow any increase in the flood level for any improvements. This is necessary to maintain compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program to adopt this. It's also a property owner protection ordinance. It affects many properties along the lake a little bit along their shoreline. It affects a handful of properties a little bit more than a little bit all along the Lake Mendota shoreline. The boundaries of the floodplain line, the line is not changed. So it's not creeping further in or out, from where it is right now.
And it's all lots that are on the water.
It only affects lots on the water, so no inland, areas
My
are.
question was whether the changes, were detrimental to any properties in Maple Bluff. Did they lose any type of access to flood insurance or gain any? And what we found out through all the discussion is, since we're in a community, as are most communities in Wisconsin or across the country, that's part of the National Flood Insurance Program, any resident of, or any property owner in Maple Bluff can apply for whatever it's called, yeah, flood insurance, the federally provided flood insurance. You can also get it through a private carrier. Sometimes it's more economical one way or the other. But that was interesting to find out.
Did all of the affected homeowners get notice of this change in the map?
They did not. The map, the map line didn't change, Mike, the designation changed.
Okay.
Yep.
But are we going to send a notice to everyone?
That would be every lakefront property owner, pretty much. But it's not.
But what's
a
it's
requirement.
changed? It hasn't changed.
Well, the designation, I mean,
The change has basically allowed, at present, there is a minuscule allowance for increasing the flood elevation if you were to build something in the floodplain. With the proposed change, that minuscule allowance has disappeared.
But the floodplain doesn't extend, I think, except in a very few.
weren't there like 4 lots?
Yeah, that it actually that extends to the buildable area.
Yeah,
There's a building envelope, right?
Yeah,
So do those 4, I can't remember, I know we talked about this at the last meeting, but are the people whose building envelope is affected by this? It just seems like we should at least give maybe that group of people notice. It just,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that all of this stuff is online and accessible to people, but it would be good
Nobody's
for us.
trolling the
Yes,
website.
no one-
well, and if they're selling their house or anything like that, any federally backed mortgage.
It would just seem like a good community service to let the affected property owners. Know of this stuff you doesn't do.
we can certainly do that, Mike. What they can do about it is
Right.
another story.
If we didn't want to, if we wanted to do something about it, we really can't.
Yeah,
We have to adopt.
it's right. If you want to maintain eligibility of your community for NFIP, you have to adopt it.
Right.
So this is probably the only area that's, it really kind of punches into the buildable area of any of the lots in the northwest corner of Fuller's Woods.
And with your knowledge of that lot, Mark, is that creating any challenges with the intentions of that lot?
This is one of the.
Oh,
Bill-
with 55?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. They were well aware of it. They made a point of staying out of the floodplain, which is always the best recipe.
Yeah.
And the proposal would elevate the lowest opening level up 2 feet above the flood elevation, which is another requirement of the new zoning ordinance, not in the floodplain regs.
And that's Burroughs Park right at the top,
Yeah,
right?
There's 2 lots off of Harbor.
Yes.
They look like the home might be in.
Yeah.
One of them there.
Yeah, and the one right next to, right below Burroughs Park is the one that I remember. I don't know how many years ago, where there was literally water, waves lapping against their basement. Or their walkout basement.
Yeah, there are pictures in their property file, their patio door, and the water's probably up 3 feet
Yeah,
on their patio door.
And that's also the access point for all the neighbors.
the easement.
Yeah, that.
This one right here.
That I was.
Well, you just have less path to
Areas.
walk down before
Yeah.
lunch.
That's where we have our neighborhood parties.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, aside from that, I couldn't say with 100% certainty, but I do not believe that any other buildable areas are affected. The beach.
Again, I just think it would be a nice thing for us to do. It doesn't have to be.
There's
by
only
email.
4
If we can send an email or something, just say FYI.
you're in the floodplain, you would continue to be, the new rules are
Right.
available, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah,
The line hasn't
but you all to
changed.
figure out where.
Do you
those
think
are.
it's news to people that anybody in the village is eligible for national flood insurance? You don't think
Yeah.
it's news?
That is news. I don't know. I don't think most people think about getting flood insurance.
More of
I would if my house
clerical
wasn't
thing,
where it
where
was.
you
Huh?
do- it becomes more of a clerical thing when you do your mortgage filing, your application for a mortgage. The bank or lender will ask if it's in a floodplain or a designated area, and if it is. Then typically there's some federal insurance available that the lender will require, but if it's not, then it's not.
I just wonder,
That's
reading
correct,
accounts
Ben.
about what happened in Milwaukee.
Right,
A couple of weeks ago, how many people afterwards called their insurance company and said, hey,
Right.
yeah, and
Well,
they said,
that-
well, you don't have flood coverage.
That might be a different issue, like, because it was, those were areas, by my understanding, a lot of which were not.
No, it doesn't matter though, they're in a community that complies with the NFIP.
they could buy flood
And-
insurance
and
if
then-
They
they
could
chose.
apply for.
Right.
they apply for flood insurance.
That
We're
would-
not in,
But I don't
I
think.
think
those
most
are
are-
what's
considered
whatever
like
zone,
flood.
what?
It's like
Yeah,
those-
whatever it's called that
And
you're
the
not in.
way I understand, so I looked
Are
up
we
the
in the
definition.
My
of it, but
point
yeah.
is just, I think people would
No
be
zone.
surprised by the fact
No
they
zone.
could
Yeah.
hear.
Okay, all right, let's get back
A
on
part
things.
of it.
Do I have a motion to approve this amendment?
Just the parts along.
So second,
These little, these.
more discussion. So I've got a motion and a second to approve this amendment to 226. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
I,
Motion passes. Thank you again, Mark. Discuss and develop recommendation to village board regarding repeal and recreation of chapter. Oh, that's already got, so that was the floodplain. Discuss and take action on 2017 Gateway Plan, street state improvements. So just a little bit of historical context here. When the Gateway Plan. This part of the Gateway Plan was put together in 2017 and approved by the village board. It was generally, put there to wait for when we had to do street improvements. It's getting there, so, and street improvements or major capital projects are typically a 2-year process. So the first year is the planning, the second year is the execution. So now would be the time to get costs for design and engineering in the 2026 budget. So that's why it's on our thing now. We don't have to do these improvements, but at that time, the plan commission, the TID committee, which no longer exists, and the village board all thought that option 3 were a good way to go. And I just want to reconfirm that, and we'll take that to the village board, and if the village board agrees, then we'll take it through all the requisite committees and steps to get plans developed, invite more public comment.
When you say option 3.
Was
it gonna go-
So
Yeah, I
Mark,
can-
why don't you take us through it? Yeah.
Sure. Just to go with the preliminaries quickly, you all know North Sherman's pretty constrained. In other words, we can't necessarily widen it. Right of ways is where it is. There's buildings and stuff really close to it. That's the first point and thing we had to deal with in 2016. We did meet with the city transportation staff at that point in time. We had a second meeting during the process that involved Tom and Brian Worquist, the village engineer, and other staff. We looked at 6 different options for how through the village of Maple Bluff, North Sherman could be redesigned. We quickly focused in on the area between this intersection here at Oxford and the commercial intersection for changes. There are other areas where half of the right of way is in the village and half is in the city to the south, east there. Basically, there was no consideration for change. In other words, when it's ready to get fixed up, it would get fixed up pretty much like it looks like right now. Like I said, we looked at 6 options. They included on-street parking options, including the potential for putting parking on both sides of the street. Ultimately, that there's just not enough room for that to do all the other things that are necessary, including moving cars and bikes along the street and keeping sidewalks on both sides. We looked at various options that included removing the two-way left turn lane or twiddle, as it's called, and as a means to kind of advance the vision of the gateway plan. Included providing for efficient traffic movement, and making the district, the gateway area more of a two location for traffic, just to put, rather than a place you buzz through to get somewhere else. To leverage redevelopment and make it a more attractive environment for doing business and living. To develop and enhance the ability to get across North Sherman. We have the current refuge median, but are there other options? So with that kind of backdrop, we did narrow those down back in 2016, early 17, to 3 different options, and I'll pop those up on screen right now. So they were technically called A, B, and C, but whatever. Let me make sure, see if I can make it all full screen here. Okay, there we go. So I'll just go up there because otherwise we're gonna be missing each other here. Here's Oxford, here's commercial, here's Roxbury, Lakewood, Bosses right over here. So the option A option basically had the notion of replacing the two-way left turn lane in most places in this stretch with a median. You see the grass median, to kind of create that opportunity for better crossings, slow traffic down, create a better business environment, maybe a little more green space for the redevelopment of what became the Gordon after that. Staying with the two-way left turn lane for much of the stretch between Roxbury and Oxford. We've got a lot of folks needing to move into driveways and do left turns to make that happen. And then introduce another median at the end. So that was option A. There was some other little minor stuff, but those are the main components of A. And then option B focused particularly on parking and providing on-street parking where possible. So I think this is B, yes, full screen. I'm faster than my computer. So for B, the real focus was to provide parking close to the commercial, uses, so it could be served by the commercial uses. So remember what I said, if we're going to introduce, especially a turn lane, keep a left turn lane at commercial, which is a significant traffic movement. There was really no way to do two-side parking in that stretch, and so option B yielded, the numbers flexible or float, but this shows 8 parking spaces between commercial and where you started to affect the driveway that goes into Lakewood, negative way. So as a result, this option didn't have any median to it. Between Roxbury and Oxford, this option, instead of keeping the twiddle, shrunk the paved section of the road, kept a bike lane on either side, but just one lane of traffic, and created a bigger terrace area between the sidewalk and the curb, create a little bit more space between the houses, both existing and planned redevelopment and the travelway of the road. But continue to be no parking, no twiddle. People would, when they're waiting to pull into their driveway and taking left turn, presumably would, traffic behind them would have to wait for them to turn left. A little median, still some opportunities for crossing improvements. Here's where the current Roxbury refuge median is. There'd be a second one, there'd be another one at Oxford. So option C, which was the recommended option, is the next one. And of course, there it is. So it just got labeled as map 3, but it once upon a time was option C.
And that's the one that's in the.
And that's right. That's the one that's in your packet.
And, you know, it was really kind of a hybrid or a combination of those two. So it took option B more or less for the segment between Roxbury and Oxford Place, and option A more or less for the segment in front of the commercial development area. You know, the perception was that that best met the goals. It provided some, you know, the changes in traffic movement, which will have the effect of slowing traffic down as you kind of negotiate your way through the area. Provided opportunities for, again, that separation of the housing from the street a little bit more where there is housing. And an opportunity for a more of a commercial kind of district feel in the area that's focused on commercial.
Is there any parking at all?
There was there's no on-street parking in this option C or map 3. So, you know, what we sacrificed by that B and what we explored is we had eight parking spaces that we could gain if we went with that.
Is there any on commercial?
Yeah, and we
Yeah,
added
Or are
that
there?
between 2017 and now.
Okay,
Yeah, there definitely is commercial. Have parking.
There wasn't before.
right, and this continues that.
Yeah, this
Okay.
continues that.
Okay.
The other thing is that all the concepts talk about is more of a signage treatment too, so there's a real feeling and there will be signage of some kind, you know, it's just conceptual now. So you'll know when you're entering Maple Bluff from both directions, probably talking about extending that signage change down to the Lakewood entrance off of Sherman too, even though that's half of Sherman is controlled by the city, but and I think the other thing that's important to understand is that all this, whether we go through any of these things or not, or we just decide just to resurface the street, can be and will be paid for out of TID funds. Correct, Sarah? And we've got, if nothing changes, if we don't get any more new development, we will make over the life of the TID, we will net another 2.2 million. So it'll pay for a lot of this. Now, I don't know how we finance it. We still might bond it and pay for the, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'd have to, and you'd
yeah,
think.
and pay for it
that
in TID
you should
funds. Because we don't get all those funds and, you know, we
Right.
get some every year. But that's kind of nice to know that, I mean, that's what the TID was created for.
So what is the decision or the action that we're taking today?
So what I'd like from this committee is to make a recommendation to the village board in terms of which of any, if any concept you'd like to move into the design and estimate stage.
Oh, design. I see.
Yeah. So,
So. Other than option 3 or including?
it could be, you know, any elements you want.
Oh, I see.
I like concept C. You know, I think that, the TID committee was
Is
more
that map
involved in the
3?
plan
Is
commission,
that the
but.
same thing as
Yeah,
map 3?
that-
Yeah, it's the
map
same thing,
three.
and it's in
I
your
like what
packet
that
up on screen.
recommends.
Yeah.
And there are some options in that that we can figure out as we go along. If we do on a step-by-step basis, but
So I'm assuming, does it affect bike lanes? Will bike lanes will stay the same?
Bike lanes are in here. Yeah,
They'll be shifted based on.
right, if you can track, yeah, well, it's impossible to see from where you are, but there's a crosshatched kind of area.
yeah,
Bike
I
lanes,
can see
yes.
that. And so then, but the actual road width is gonna stay the same. We're not taking anybody's yard.
That's correct.
Okay, so the sidewalk will stay where it is.
Yep,
And then. So what's giving is the lane size? I'm just trying to figure out.
the
where-
two-way left turn lane would be gone. So all this additional stuff is being gained at the sacrifice of the two-way left turn.
But
In a certain area.
for those 2 or 3 blocks.
Yeah, right,
Throughout parts of life.
from here to here, but from commercial down to, you know, North Sherman, Fordham and beyond, it would still remain a two-way left turn lane.
Yeah.
but in theory, it should have a calming effect on traffic speed.
I would think so, that is the intent. You're gonna bring you'll street trees, you'll have trees in a median, you'll have basically, kind of barriers, and you'll have this kind of chicaning movement where you have to kind of go in and out. All of which should have the effect of
And
creating a physical
potentially
environment.
more bikes, more pedestrian traffic.
Yeah, and that the crosswalks here, I mean, this all can come out in design, but they can be differentially colored, which also can have an effect.
So I guess the kind of the question I'm asking, like, if we're moving into design phase, I have feedback I would give on pros and cons of certain elements of this based on my experience and my witnessed experience going back and forth.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not quite sure as we see it tonight, how much of that's open for revisiting or how much it'll be just take the direction of the committee.
I think the next steps, and Mark and I have talked a little bit about this, so. Given that it's been 8 years since we came up with this. The only reason we're moving with any kind of haste right now is I want to get it in the budget planning process. But the way I understand it, or the way I'd like to see us move forward is once they get approved for the budget, then we can have more of a public. Discussion about the nuances of this.
Yeah.
But basically what I'm asking. The planning commission to recommend is a concept.
And not individual.
Not individual houses, but we
Design
are
elements.
saying we're not interested in talking about on-street parking.
Yes.
So we're just narrowing it down to the elements of the concept. Where trees go, how long the median is, what the sign looks like.
How thick the
many signs
median
are
is.
gonna-
But I would also,
Lighting.
well, I would offer this feedback. I think it is a controversial thing to take away the 2-lane train.
The center.
The center turn. lane.
Yeah.
I don't have any senses of here today of neighbors, or excuse me, people who live in that section of the road. For or against it. I do have a sense that they use it as the recommended. If you're backing out of your driveway onto Sherman Avenue, you're supposed to back into that center lane, and I would have to question out now, what are they supposed to do, and is that safe or not? I completely agree with anything we can do. To create more refuge medians and to avoid pedestrian conflicts. Especially now that there's some vibrancy around Lakewood Plaza. At the same time, I witness that whole Roxbury intersection is kind of a. Confusing intersection right now between the 2 lanes of traffic and the center turn lane, and if we're taking away a left turn lane going south. Into Lakeway Plaza, or limiting it, I question what the impacts would be, so some of those things, and then just sort of given the budget constraints, like which of these. Would we pay a premium for versus which of these maybe in 8 years ago, or
Will there
we
be,
had a more flush or a different financial outlook, I mean, I don't know.
will there be a turn lane here? In
So
Lakewood?
if you're
I thought
if you're
there
heading,
was.
this is a design detail that could definitely be fleshed out and
Yeah.
tweaked.
Okay,
So as it's laid out in the concept, first of all, no one's gonna build off this concept, and that wasn't the intent, it's
Yeah,
intent,
fair.
yeah, you get it. I think and I'm going on 9 years ago now, in memory, but I think the feeling at the time was that there was enough room in the space to allow for some queuing of vehicles, say I'm turning left, I've got another car behind me turning left, another car behind me turning left, that might work. If in design stage, or the traffic and civil folks feel it can't, then you can see here, you could do something like this, you could narrow up the
Yeah.
median. To
If
create a
there's the
bona fide
opportunity to
turn lane.
revisit those details throughout the planning process, great, we don't need to do it here tonight, certainly. But some of those bigger issues. I view as maybe more controversial than them.
Yeah,
Definitely, that's why I think there needs to be. Take it back to the public.
served up.
and I think you can, I think you could do. All of this or much of this between, I'll just say the Roxbury intersection area and the commercial intersection area, and still keep the twiddle. If that's what those owners preferred, to having a wider green space in front of their lots.
But it's also I mean, the other reason to consider it is. I could see us get to the point where then somebody comes and says that they wanna. Us to prohibit left turns into the mall because it's backing traffic up on Sherman going south. Things like that, or does it make it more difficult to turn onto Oxford because people are backed up and they don't have the lawn? to chart it.
And then there's an overarching question, point of clarification as much as any. How much of this has to be coordinated with City of Madison, given flow of traffic, and how much of this?
None of
We
it
would want
on,
to be-
none of it between Oxford and commercial.
Okay, as a historical precedent, for example, when the road as a whole went from 4 lanes to 3. Did we or didn't we coordinate in efforts with the city?
The city coordinated with us, the city. Solicited our support to do it on our streets and we agreed to.
Okay.
Do it. We thought it would be good to go along there, and it was controversial.
Yeah.
There was a lot of,
Was there any funding available through City of Madison for anything we were obligated to?
I think this, I'd have to check back, but I think the city paid for.
Because it was just
Paid for
striping.
something.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
just
it
striping.
Oh,
Paying
That's
for
much.
expensive.
The notion of traffic blocking other traffic is one that will definitely need to be investigated. I think, as I heard it indirectly, Public Works has some concern about,
You know,
the
here-
trash and recyclable collection.
Here's the thing we gotta balance. One of the things that's always appealed to me about all of these concepts is slowing traffic.
Oh, absolutely.
And also discouraging traffic,
Yeah,
through traffic to
having
there.
them go
You
pack.
know, I've always used the measure, I wanna see, right now, if you're sitting in the parking lot of Culver's on Northport and you GPS a route to the Capitol, it's gonna take you down Sherman Avenue. Independent of some special accidents, or anything like that. I'd love to see it come to the point where 9 times out of 10, it takes you down Packers instead, because of what we've
To
done.
that end, are there things where we might have shared goals with City of Madison at different other intersections or points in their portion of the right of way, or shared portions of the right of way that might have upstream or
Instead,
downstream ways to impact?
We'll see.
Okay.
But I think we need to move ahead on our section. Just for the budgeting process and just. To maintain our autonomy with that, you know, whatever happens in the shared areas will be a shared decision.
There are city, as you know, as you drive up and down more than me, there are medians. City has installed medians at various spots along it as well. Kind of breaking things down, creating a safer crossing mostly is, I think, is the goal. But it likely has the effect of maybe by a mile or 2 an hour slowing down speeds as you approach those areas.
Maybe not with trees, but.
Yeah, but to Ben's point, I mean, wouldn't it? Help us to at least communicate this with the city to see, maybe they'll come in and say, hey, let's do it all the way down. to
Oh, certainly.
Sherman Splits or something like that.
The city came to us 2 years ago,
It's probably 3 or 4 now.
3 or 4 years ago, to talk about doing. The joint repaving or whatever reconditioning the street. Pretty soon, you know, whenever they came to us, it was like within 6 months to a year. And we basically said, whoa, that's too fast and we don't need to do ours yet and we're not ready. And so they said, okay, and they went. And I don't know, put in red bus only lanes, or whatever. So we'd have to, you know, we tell the city what's going on and invite doing that, but you know, we need to resurface our section of the streets and you know, we'll coordinate with them where we need to coordinate with them and where it'll make most sense to.
There's a whole new cast of characters, but here's my notes from the 2016 meeting with the city. And, you know, they, to the extent that they could have, they didn't object to the idea, they understood the idea. They weren't necessarily going to do anything different in their section, but times have changed. You know, once upon a time, the BRT route, the north-south route was gonna go up Sherman, it's not, it's gonna go up Packers now. So they might be viewing Sherman as more, I don't wanna call it a neighborhood street, because that would be an
Yeah.
Well,
undersell,
and sort of some of the fallen impacts of the BRT decision, right? It could have gone the other way too, if it had become the BRT route, there'd be federal funds, it's applicable to do this with it or everything.
That's true too.
Which is just to say, right, it might be worth asking the question, or at the very least. If there's some, I don't know, it should have a design for gauge, but if there's some economic sort of scale that could be.
You know, we could also,
Dovetailed with what they're doing, save money, maybe.
we should also review it with the MTL.
Yeah.
And see what they think about it too, and they're a sister organization to CARC that I'm a commissioner, of. In fact, occupy the same offices.
Yeah.
So.
Cause I know one thing I think City Metro would do. is move the bus stop past the light at commercial, if that was a feasible thing. I don't know if that was contemplated at any point in this, or if we even want to do it, but.
That's a good point. They usually put them on the
they usually-
far side of the
If they
lane.
can,
Right.
right? And I've talked to bus drivers that haven't gotten on at that station who have complained about having to stop, and that sometimes they just run through the red light if there's no traffic
Mhm.
coming, or sometimes they don't.
Might
Um,
makes
You
right.
know, so it just, that's where I could see little things popping up for coordination.
Has there been any discussion of speed changes? For that zero pedestrian?
No, I don't believe there were in the planning process either. I mean, in the.
You know more than has there
Nothing
any
on
recent
So
talk.
this gateway
That
plan
is-
was developed basically as an amendment to our comprehensive plan,
Mhm.
which is, you know, a 20,000 foot. Planning thing,
But all
What-
that has been within the last year or two.
Uh-huh.
The going from 25 down to 20 or 30 down to 25. With
Well,
the
let's say-
city.
There have been discussions about the speed limit on North Sherman Avenue to begin
Yeah.
with and the potentiality of reducing it, but it was detached from conversations about the gateway plan.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it fits right in.
Yeah.
So, and that may also spur them to whatever changes might be happening before us or after us on Sherman. Just bring them up.
So you want us to move?
I'd love it if we could move and make a recommendation to the board, but if you're not comfortable in doing that, we can.
How about
Table it.
this? I would make a motion to move it into the budget process as you indicated the desire. With the guidance to start the design process to focus first and foremost about optimal street utilization to calm traffic and increase beautification through the commercial area. Generally in line with the concepts considered by the TID committee.
So
But
that,
I don't know, but I would limit my motion there. Just because I don't necessarily want to get into the making recommendations about the details of the streetscape exact.
yeah, I think so. I think the word concept carries a lot of weight.
Okay.
So I'd be comfortable, or I'd recommend, make a motion to. Recommend concept C. To be to the village board. Knowing that the, you know, the details.
Right, and I'm saying expressly, I would caveat it because I don't personally necessarily support. Concept C, if concept C got implemented exactly as drawn, I would be disappointed as a resident. For some pretty fundamental things, particularly through the. Where I think, you know, maybe there are some simple design tweaks, but when I look at this, I think there's gonna be some things that are controversial that. I don't necessarily want the plan commission weighing in saying this is. For the purposes of a budget process, you know. Going so far as to say, and we want it to look like this, because I think there's more work to do. One of those would be, I don't know that I support expanding the medians and all the costs that will go with that if I don't think necessarily. It's the most efficient or impactful spending of money. Cause I think the money's gonna be tight, I don't know, I'm not saying it isn't, I'm just saying as we sit here today, I don't think we're prepared, I'm not prepared to weigh in on that.
I kind of viewed it as you want to, Jim, you want to move to design stage and you wanted to know whether there should be a significantly different concept to start with as part of the design
Right.
process. But if you're going to meet with the city, if you're going to meet with owners, if you're going to get an engineer, you know, heavily involved, there's going to be changes to this.
Right,
Absolutely.
and I'm open to all of that, I just know. If you say we recommend the concept and people consider it a final decision, that may not happen, like, that's what I'm not sure.
So what if you phrased your motion something like? Recommend moving forward on developing. The streetscape concepts.
But do we need to do that? I mean, can't we just, because I mean, the next step will be is. I mean, the budget committee has to set aside the money for this, right? So. This is to
Which
prompt them
drives
to
which?
set aside.
Well, this is to,
mean,
I
if
wanna
we-
make sure that the board. You know, that the rest of the board agrees that we want to pursue doing that, pursue doing some type of streetscape improvements beyond just resurfacing Sherman Avenue. And obviously, I'm trying to get my head around on what the right steps to get there are, but the clock is ticking. So I wanna move this along as without, cutting away the possibility of massaging the details, so I don't know if it has to be concept C, or you're just recommending to the village board, we're recommending to the planning commission, who has responsibility over the comprehensive plan. To recommend that we move into the implementation stage on the, or maybe it's concept development stage on the village gateway plan streetscape improvements. And I wanna keep it to streetscape improvements, because the gateway plan is many more pages than this, but it talks about all sorts of economic development that frankly isn't going anywhere. Yeah.
Is there another? Of those two motions that's closer, what?
If the trigger point for the plan commission is related to the comprehensive plan, and this has already been adopted through into the comprehensive plan, I'll say, I'm not trying to revisit that or open that can of worms tonight by any means.
Right.
I would just also want the process to allow for substantive changes to the extent they further the goals that we're trying to achieve, right? That's all.
That's a good point, because there are goals laid out in the plan that are separate from this specific design that you're looking at, and what I'm hearing you saying, you have no problem with the goals.
I don't have a problem with the goals, and
Yeah.
frankly, I'm sure they were well considered and all of that, I just. If we're, I just don't want the assumption to be. The design. That, I don't want the assumption to be the opposite of what you want the assumption, you don't want the assumption to be that. Hey, we said go ahead and repave the street and restripe it exactly as is, you'd like to see some substantive changes in like the goals, so would I. I think it's, the reality is the final answer is gonna be somewhere in between where it is today. That's all. And as long as there's room in the process for that, and that's what the board understands and is for, I'm good with how we phrase.
How much input was there from the residents along Sherman there during this, when you were looking at A, B, and C?
There was a public process, in which they were invited, we had a meeting in the
More
gym.
people show up than this?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, we had plenty of people.
Okay. And did we hear from the people who are gonna lose this as backing out of their driveway, the kind of safety that the middle provides?
I didn't hear any outcry, I don't remember any outcry from anyone. But it would be a normal part of a design process to have a public meeting
Right.
early, and then have a public meeting when you have a preliminary design. And the early meeting might say, yeah, this looks fine, I'd love to have a grassed area, in front of my yard that's twice as big as it is now.
Right.
Or they might say, no, I really depend on that. And then Tom or someone else might say, well, we need that for our trucks to get people around safely if they're stopped, and that kind of stuff normally comes out through a engineering design process. So I think what you're saying is you want the process to not only include an engineer in a room, trying to design it, but a public process that involves the property owners and the village staff and city staff for coordination opportunity.
I mean, the people who are most affected are gonna be the homeowners on Sherman and then the mall itself. Because again, it's gonna affect how people are accessing the parking lot to turn in.
Or
There's gonna be-
people who walk from the neighborhood. walk into the
People who
village.
drive out of the village and exit on Oxford
Right.
and head downtown that way.
Right, and again, maybe in 2016, we got all this input, it's just, I'm just.
That's why I'm saying we keep doing it. That's why
Things have changed too.
26.
Yeah.
In 10 years.
And I'm not trying to short circuit the public process.
Fair.
I mean, I'm trying to get this back out into the public process.
I think of that mall in 2016 versus the way it is now, I mean, the amount of traffic in it is probably tripled, quadrupled from where it was at that point.
No. So we don't, do we have a motion? I don't
That one
believe we
has been
do.
There was no second,
There was a second?
There was
No,
one.
That's been second.
We didn't,
so you're gonna have to restate it. because That motion was 10 minutes long.
I mean, the immediate need, and what you need is something to occur by the village board to bring this to a head, right? Because
I want the-
we
I-
can't do it on our own.
I wanna bring a recommendation to the village board to move forward with implementing some part of the Gateway Streetscape plan. And getting into at least the public design and budgeting process. Because if we're aiming to do this 2027, the earliest, we need to get it.
So if I
Going
move
to
to, instead of saying implementing, consider it. The gateway plan, I just,
How about refining Gateway, the Gateway Streetscape concept?
Confirming.
can I ask, this map 3, was that the map that was approved as part of the
Yes,
gateway plan, as opposed to,
No, all the concepts
1,
were
2,
included in
and
Gateway
3
plan,
were-
no, they
right?
weren't.
yeah.
No, they were just, this
They,
was.
they were just included in the
Yeah.
process.
Oh, that's true.
So
That's the only thing.
we already approved this as part of the gateway plan,
And by we,
It's
yeah,
we meaning
the village board,
Good village policy, right?
But
Yeah.
10 years has passed.
yeah.
And we want to take what we decided on then and revisit it with whatever new knowledge and
Yeah,
new design edification that we might want
that's a good way of looking at it.
because I'm just concerned if we say implementing, it's taking what was
Yeah.
done 10 years ago
Yeah.
and doing it.
to.
Right.
Yeah. And things have changed, but we have a starting point, and to your point. We may scrap parts of this,
Or adjust.
or, right.
So one of the motions says something like in 2016, we approved
This.
concept C in the village.
As a
What we're
concept.
asking the villages to approve is revisiting and refining that concept to meet current needs.
Current needs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And opportunities.
And
And
design,
move
right,
into,
and
yeah,
move into
and
the budget.
authorize the funds, to put us funds in the budget for.
Such that improvements could be undertaken. Concurrent with the city's own timing. Like, isn't there a part of the need to get into the process because there's a fee budget?
We don't have to do this part in conjunction with the city.
No, I mean,
No,
the
but
actual
we-
eventual, whatever gets decided through this process. Even if it's exactly the same as that, when we go to actually perform the
Yeah.
improvement, do the construction. Does that need to be timed up with the city or some outside date?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So we recently just did some crack filling and pothole filling on our 2 blocks of Sherman Avenue. We don't have to coordinate that with the city. You know, it'd be nice to coordinate everything in the city. There might be some efficiencies of scale there, but I don't know that. We'll see as we go along and develop it, but
So your point about wanting to bring it forward and start the process moving
Yeah.
is more of a, well, let's get this done in 2027. Not that there's any particular reason it has to be 2027.
no, we've got to resurface our streets relatively
Okay.
soon. Our streets are in bad shape.
So
So the
it-
question is do we want to do these additional improvements or
coordination
changes at the same time?
For
Which would definitely be
efficiencies
more
and
cost efficient, yeah.
economies of scale, okay.
So Sarah, I'll move Jim's motion.
To revisit and refine
Yeah.
map 3 to the correct
Exactly how he
needs.
said.
Concept C, yeah.
Oh, map 3, okay.
Do I have a second?
Was there
Are you-
a,
Second,
was there a part of that motion to move forward with budgeting and design as well, or is it just to refine the concept?
I think it's to refine the concept at this point.
Well,
Or I think you.
I need to get it into budget and design. I can't wait, otherwise it's gonna push it back a year.
Okay, okay.
I mean, part of the budgeting is to cover, so Mark's gonna help us refine the concept, we're gonna need to get some engineering
Right.
drawings and.
But I
That's
guess
part of the
what I,
budgeting
That's where it's-
process.
this is our recommendation, because what I guess I'm saying is as the finance committee figures out the entire village budget. They then have to come back and figure out whether this is gonna be a priority compared to other items.
Just the design part of it right now, and remember, this money
Right,
comes out of,
100% agree, but all I'm saying is if the finance committee wants to bring a recommendation to the board of not financing the design, they can still do that.
they can,
I wrote what I think you set up on the screen, and I don't know if that's.
That works. Preliminary design budget.
I think it works.
Okay,
Do you think it needs to be more specific regarding time, or I don't?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Do I have a second? Oh, Deb seconded it.
Yeah.
Any more discussion?
Save that word.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mark. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, guys. I know this is,
I,
been quite sure what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but
The concept.
we're in the house.
Design.
Thanks a lot. Do I have a motion to adjourn? We don't have anything else on the agenda, do we? Do you have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Aye. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Deb.
bye.
Interestingly, it would have been, you guys would have been, once these, just for me, you guys would have been 5 minutes more late.